this is like a little companion piece to the previous podcast where we talked about gimmick matches. There's a little add-on bonus content for you guys where we talk about some honorable mentions that didn't make our list. And I would like to talk about... Well, let's talk about a good one first, and then we'll get to the bad ones. I wanted to talk about the Duchess of Queensberry Rules match from Backlash 2001 between William Regal and Chris Jericho. I really like this match. Just because it's a really good match that makes sense in wrestling, in that it's what wrestling's supposed to be. Wrestling's supposed to be a face has to overcome the odds, but the heel is the one manipulating those odds. That's wrestling 101. You know what I mean? The heel stacks the odds in his favor, and the face has to overcome that. And in the Duchess of Queensberry Rules match, William Regal has found a lady who is the Duchess of Queensberry, and she makes up all the rules. And the joke is that nobody except the Duchess of Queensberry knows what the rules are. So whenever Chris Jericho goes and gets William Regal in a pinfall, for example, counts to 3, but instead of winning the match, the Duchess informs everybody that period of the wrestling match is over, and so they have a break, and then they start the next period. So then, I don't know what else happens. I think Jericho gets Regal in a pinfall, and then the Duchess says that it's submission only. Basically every time Jericho has the match won, the Duchess changes the rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good idea if done right, because I believe WCW did a similar gimmick. Lance Storm was in the match. I don't remember who he was fighting, but I've seen the match, and it's something like every time Lance Storm loses, he gets on the microphone and goes, "No, it's not. I haven't lost. You just don't know what the rules are." And for some reason, that match doesn't work as well as this Duchess of Queensberry Rules match. But
it's like Canadian rules or something.
Yeah, exactly. And only he knows what the rules are. But for some reason, it just doesn't flow as well as the Jericho one, the William Regal one, So I wanted to give that an honorable mention. And then I have 2 bad matches, if you want to hear them. One of my bad matches is one that you would imagine people would talk about on a podcast about shitty gimmick matches. One that we have to cover, and that's the Kennel from Hell match.
Oh, of course.
Because it's infamous for just being, quite literally, it's a shit show. You know what I mean? The idea was 2 cages, wasn't it? An inside cage, and then a bigger Hell in a Cell outside cage, but there was no roof on it. Or was there a roof? I can't remember.
No, I think it was just a regular Hell in a Cell on top of a steel cage. On the ring, yeah.
And then in between the 2 cages, there were rabid dogs, And then, on paper, it was kind of a good idea. And I've heard Al Snow talking about this before. And he talked about how, he was talking to Russo about this. And I think Russo was the one that pitched it. And Al said to him, okay, you have to do me a favor. If you get dogs, the rule, never work with animals or children. If you get dogs, make sure they're from a reputable, company. And make sure they're all from the same place. Because you can't have, 17 different dog handlers running around with different dogs. You need, one company that is professional and knows how to treat dogs and knows how to use dogs on camera, on television. You know what I mean? And Russo's like, yeah, whatever. And Al Snow, it was very insistent. He's like, Russo, please. Okay? Getting closer and closer to the match. He's like, you've definitely done this, right? And Russo's like, yeah, sure, I'm listening. And of course, come the day, Al Snow sees 17 different dog handlers handling 17 different dogs, and he's not happy about it, but he can't do anything about it. So they have to have their match, and I think that was the main problem with the match. It was the dogs. They were a major distraction.
Dogs, yeah, they didn't have any interest in looking ferocious or anything, did they? They were just basically like trying to shag each other in ringside, and or just like pissing all over the place.
Yeah. So on paper it had the possibility of being good, but it was not good. And I don't know if you've ever heard the alternate commentary for it.
Oh no.
It's on a Mick Foley DVD, I think, where Mick Foley and I think Michael Cole do like alternate commentary. And you can imagine how that goes. You know what Mick Foley's like when it comes to ribbon Al Snow. So
oh god, yeah.
It is. I mean, that's I'm gonna say that's a redeeming feature of that match, is that alternate commentary is a beautiful thing, and it wouldn't exist if that match didn't exist. So it can't be that bad, but it also is really bad. And then my final honorable mention, and this is gonna take up the bulk of this conversation, I would imagine, but it's something else. Let me tell you, dude. I don't know if you've ever seen this match. I had never seen it till a couple of nights ago. I went looking it up specifically for this. And it is a triple cage match with David Arquette versus Jeff Jarrett versus Diamond Dallas Page, Slamboree 2000. Back to WCW in the 2000s. Now let me tell you, man, this is going to sound like this might surprise you, but I was never a big fan of David Arquette. I gotta say.
Really?
I don't think his wrestling work's on point. Yeah, you know what? He can cut a good promo. Fair enough. But I just didn't think he was that good as a wrestler. You know what I mean?
Well, he's just come back to wrestling as well.
I mean, maybe he can do better this time. But he's a former champion. I get that. But I just never got the impression that he was a good wrestler. Now, if you want proof of this, watch this triple cage match where David Arquette hits 0 moves in 15 minutes, right? Let me explain this match, because this is another really complicated match. There are 3 cages. There's a Hell in a Cell style cage, okay? That surrounds the ring. I should say that the entrance ramp was it wasn't sloped. It ran straight from the ramp to the ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of in the old school WCW style.
Yeah. So there's a little square cut out in the cage to allow for it to sit on top of the ramp. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's that cage, and on top of that cage is a smaller cage, maybe about the size of the ring. Lengthwise, maybe a little smaller, and that's probably about 10 feet tall, right? On top of this cage, and on top of that cage is a smaller cage, maybe twice the width of a shark cage. Okay.
Yeah.
And then on top of that cage hangs the WCW Championship. Okay. So the rules are the competitors start in the middle of the ring, and they have to climb up a ladder into the second cage. And inside that second cage, that's the hardcore cage, where all the hardcore weapons are, including a table, which I thought was a very, bad move. Put a table on top of a cage. So then, once you get into that cage, you get out of that cage, basically on top of the first cage. You climb up the second cage, and then, up the side of it, and then you don't really have to go into the third cage at all. The third cage is the guitar cage. It has guitars in it. And then you climb on top of that cage, and from there you can reach the championship, right? But already you were crazy high up That's insane how high up you are, right? So this is a stupid, dangerous ass fucking ridiculous concept of a piece of shit, right? And it's like I after having watched it, I don't know if it's a bad match or a good match. Do you know what I mean? Well, obviously it's not a good match, but like it's so fucking insane. Like it's so stupid that I'm like, I mean, I like stupid things. Do I like this? It's like every time you think it's done, it finds a way of one-upping itself. Now this is the callback I remembered. Remember I said that on the main podcast that the point of a cage is to keep people out, right?
Yeah.
There's a bit in this match near the end where DDP and Jeff Jarrett are fighting on top of the first cage, outside the hardcore cage, if you will.
Yeah.
Camera is nice, so they're already like what, 15 feet up or whatever, and the camera's like tight on those two guys, and then out of nowhere Mike Awesome just is on top of the cage. I'm like, what? Seriously, where did he come from? Did nobody see him climbing the cage? Why is he on top of the cage? He just runs in and just starts attacking TDP, right? Which is just mental. There's a bit where they're in the hardcore cage, and they like, the spot where you're throwing somebody against the wall of a cage. They throw each other against the wall of the second cage that's on top of the first cage, and the wall falls out. You know what I mean? And obviously that's gimmicked, but like, what a weird spot to put in, and then also they do use the table. I assumed that was, for show, but no, they set up a table on top of this cage, on top of a Hell in a Cell, and they go through it. I'm like, wow, they're hitting a lot of big stuff here, and it's all like, it's a lot of big stuff, but with no like follow up or substance,
Yeah.
It's insane. And then at some point, Canyon comes in as well. Oh no, Canyon comes in at the end, but he comes in exactly like Mike Awesome did, in that you just see these guys fighting, and then suddenly there's Canyon, but also they're on top of this fucking cage. So you're like, how are people still getting up here? Right? It doesn't make any sense. This is just when the match is over, by the way. The end of the match, if you haven't seen it, and you probably won't, because it's garbage, is that David Arquette and DDP have an agreement where Arquette will help DDP win the match. So Arquette scrambles to the top of the cage, very tip top of the cage, grabs a guitar from the guitar room, and then while Jarrett and DDP both climb up the cage to the very top, Arquette teases he's going to hit Jarrett, but he really hits DDP. The big swerve that every fucking guy saw coming. Like, we saw it coming a mile away, and that's what happened. So Mike Awesome, once the match is over, he grabs DDP and like attacks him, and then Canyon comes out of nowhere and attacks Mike Awesome, who no-sells it, and then he throws Canyon off the cell onto the entrance ramp. And I'm like, what the fuck is any of this? Why the Canyon bit? What's that? It's all just crazy fucking. I don't know.
Well, to try and make some sense of it, I think the whole concept of it seems like WCW basically trying to outdo Hell in a Cell, basically, like just do their own thing but make it bigger and better. But in terms of Canyon, I guess in a situation with this was after Mick Foley got tossed off the Hell in a Cell, so their kind of thought was, well, if we have this super gigantic triple layer cage, then like the fans are going to expect to see someone get chucked off the top of it. So they kind of had to give the fans what they wanted in that respect. But there's no way, like, David Arquette was going to be taking that bump. So they probably, that was the only reason why, like, Canyon was interfering in the match and stuff, was because he is probably the only person dumb enough or brave enough to do it.
True. But again, from like and I hate to use the phrase match psychology in a match like this because, there wasn't any. But, like, none of that needed to happen. And I understand.
No.
I understand you saying that they would have to, try to one up the WWE, but they didn't have to. It's a triple cage. You can, you can come up with spots on the triple cage that are still pretty, like for example, that spot where they went through the wall of the cage, and both, like, Jarrett and DDP kind of looked at each other as if to say, "Fuck, we almost fell off the side of this thing." Like that, that's enough. Because everybody in the audience knew it. They were like, "Fuck!" They almost fell off the side of that. That was the hook. You can get away with not killing a man, and the fact that they said Canyon's the only one who's going to do it, but he's not in the match. Fuck him, put him in anyway. They didn't have to do that. It was it was just more unnecessary bullshit. I just wanted to point out a couple of commentary things that I find very funny. I don't know. I don't really watch WCW from 2000 much, so I can't really tell the difference between Mark Madden and Scott Norton. Is it Scott Norton?
No.
Scott.
The
fuck's that guy's name?
I was gonna say.
Scott, right? Mark and Scott.
Yeah.
I don't know the difference. Scott Norton's the other guy. He's a wrestler. It's definitely not Scott Norton. But somebody at some point says this is a wrestling match for the biggest prize in wrestling that involves no wrestling. Isn't that ironic? I'm like, dude, that ain't ironic, man. This is this is a different word than ironic. And then one other thing, right before the match starts, they're talking about how David Arquette doesn't seem to, he doesn't want to defend the belt.
Yeah.
He said he was going to give it up, but he was forced into the match anyway. And Tony Schiavone says, "Well, what do you blame him for? He didn't even want the damn thing." Very accusingly, and he says, "Doesn't even want the damn thing," referring to the World Heavyweight Championship. And then immediately the camera cuts to a shot of that thing, the World Heavyweight Championship, and Schiavone's tone changes completely, and he goes, "And there it is, the most coveted prize." And you're like, wow, like, why? So many questions. Like, why are they fighting for this piece of shit? You know what I mean? Like, all the way through it, they don't do a very good job of. And also, they make it clear that this is the cage from that David Arquette film, Ready to Rumble.
So, good grief! I blocked that from my memory.
Yes, so that is the reason why all of this was happening, and you're like, well, good. I'm glad. I mean, it's a real. It's terrible, and it's almost like a guilty pleasure. You know what I mean? It's almost like so bad it's good, but in the end, I think it's just still too bad to be good. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
But I felt like I had to tell people about this because I'd heard about it and I'd never seen it, and now I've seen it, so none of you have to watch it. Don't watch it unless you hate yourself. But there you go. Have you got any honorable mentions you can think of?
Yeah, on the good side, I was going to say, like, I was kind of torn between the Last Man Standing match, which we mentioned on the main podcast, but also an I Quit match as well, which I think is the kind of gimmick, which, again, is like a, hardcore kind of style match where the two guys are just beating the shit out of each other. And the whole concept of having to do that enough to make your opponent finally give in is always kind of a cool way of like gaining a victory over someone. Like the couple that stick out for me It was like the John Cena JBL one where like Cena beat JBL so bad that like at the end JBL is just like on his backside kind of trying to push away from Cena and just like he's just like, nah, I can't take anymore, I quit. There's like no massive spot or anything there. It was just like, nah, I've had enough. And then there's obviously the big like Rock Mankind one, which I think was probably the first I Quit match, where it was the one famous for the Rock basically smashing Mankind's head in with his steel chair something like 16 or 17 times.
Yeah.
Like in front of his family as well.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. And now one of them is a successful film star and the other one can't walk.
Yeah.
It's a little unfair, but it's the way of the world.
But
yeah.
It's a fun gimmick anyway.
I really liked how that match ends with the recording of Mick saying I quit when he doesn't really.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I like that ending. That's really good because like Mick was, I think he was like, it's
unconscious.
Yes, exactly. So we couldn't say it. So and also he couldn't dispute it.
Yeah.
It was a good angle, I thought. I'm
surprised they haven't gone back to the well with that one and used it again.
Yeah, I mean they do like to reuse things, and that's why next month it's going to be a triple cage match. I mean, now that you said David Arquette's back into wrestling, would you be surprised if they hired him and put him in another triple cage match? Why not?
I mean, he's kind of in his 50s now, so
yeah,
maybe not such a good idea.
Now here's the irony of it all. He's probably a better wrestler now than when he won the World Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, I saw like a few highlights of his first match back, like from this past weekend, and he's busting out like an RKO here and there, and like doing all sorts, and yeah, he's definitely better than he was back then, that's for sure.
But yeah, also the problem is that he missed the boat by like a long way.
Oh yeah. You can kind of tell because he was wearing like back in WCW, he's like wearing basically like tracksuit pants and covered up. And
well, yeah, in this, back in WCW, in this match, the Triple Cage match, he had a big red cape and then a kind of like, red like trouser pants, and that kind of went up almost like a singlet. Kind of covered his midriff, but it was all like devil red. Very tacky.
He's wearing like actual trunks and boots and knee pads and stuff nowadays.
But like he's like he's like 50 years old?
Yeah, over 50 definitely.
Like he really should have started this a lot sooner. But brave of him to give it a go.
Yeah, for sure. And as for like a honorable mention for some shitty matches, I've got like two quite literal examples. The first being the hog pen match, which kind of is in the same vein as the whole gravy bowl kind of situation.
Yeah.
Except they're fighting in a little homemade hog pen, in the arena, which is a ridiculous concept.
Yeah.
And the other one was I'm not even sure what it would be called, but I'll go with a dog poo match, where it was right after the British Bulldog had come back to the WWF.
Oh my god, I remember this.
I think it was like a random episode of Raw or something where he's like, getting into it with The Rock and sharing a few words, and then The Rock randomly challenges him to a dog poo match, where the whole goal is essentially just to throw your opponent onto a tray of dog poo.
Yes, I remember that.
What?
Yeah, the British Bulldog and The Rock. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Good God.
Two really good wrestlers, and then they're reduced to that.
Unbelievable. Yeah, really quick, I want to throw up another couple that I'll talk about really quick. A good one I want to talk about is the Lions Den match. Because most of them are really good. In a little cage, kind of like really small octagon away from the arena. And, like Ken Shamrock and Steve Blackman. And I saw one with Ken Shamrock and Owen Hart. It was really good. They don't do them too often, but those are really good matches if you get a chance to watch them. I think the Ken Shamrock versus Steve Blackman one is SummerSlam 99. I can't remember when the Owen Hart Ken Shamrock one was, but it was really good. So check them out. And another one I'd like to put in the bad pile is any kind of bra and panties match. Because what is the point? I remember whenever I was a teenager and I watched that, and a lot of other people around me were like, yeah, bra and panty match. And I'm like, when are they going to wrestle?
Yeah.
When are they going to hit their finishing moves? Like, I wanted to see a wrestling match, I didn't want to see... Because I had the internet at that time. So if I wanted to watch two naked women wrestling, in that style, I could easily watch porn on the internet. I wanted to watch two women wrestlers wrestling. And you very rarely got that in the bra and panties match.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good thing that those matches are kind of left in the past, I think.
For sure. We're way better off nowadays with, like, women actually being allowed to wrestle and show what they can do.
Heck yeah. I'd much rather take a women's Hell in a Cell match over a women's bra and panty match, Maybe that's just me. Any other honorable mentions, or should we wrap this one up too?
I've got one more, yes. Shoot. I will go with a blindfold match. Which is just the shittiest thing. Like, oh my god. Like, fair play to Jake Roberts and Rick Martel for their one at WrestleMania 3 for, like, getting the crowd reaction that it does. Is like, if you watch that match, the crowd is so into it, like with Jake's like pointing across the ring to try and figure out whereabouts Rick Martel is, and the crowd like shouting him in the right direction and that kind of thing, and then kind of laughing at Rick Martel as he does like his bad comedy stumbling about and falling over. But yeah, it's just, in terms of spectacle, it's just, there's nothing to it whatsoever. Just two guys fumbling around the ring until, there's like a random move and then, hey, the match is over.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of those blindfold matches. They're never... It's just a weird thing to... I mean, again, I kind of understand the idea behind them, but I just think that in a lot of the time, when it comes to actually doing the match, it just doesn't work.
Nah.
Maybe that's just me, but I never really got it.
It's one of those things as well. I'm glad that it isn't a gimmick that we see too often.
Yeah, very happy to not have to worry about blindfold matches ever again.
Yeah.
But if you want to watch a blindfold match, go to the WWE Network and search for blindfold matches. Or, instead of that, go and look for all the good matches that we mentioned on the main podcast. That's a much better idea. Yeah, thank you for listening to this little addition, this little add-on, the downloadable content for the main podcast. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.